it's Charlotte, and I'm out here in the freezing cold with my horse Tiny to show you something that you could be doing on days like this, where it's cold, where your horse is dirty, where you really don't want to get on them because the wind may get them to act a little silly, but you want to get their brain really working. And we're going to do this exercise called I Spy. And I've got a lot of different sort of objects out here in this paddock. Honey, I own that space, buddy. Good job. I've got a lot of objects out in this paddock that would trigger him to be spooky. And what most horses do when they see sort of novel objects or weird things is they sort of reflect away from them. They're going to go away. And in I Spy, I want him to find my focus. I a gray tarp, or I spy a blue spot. And I want Tiny to find what I spy, and he's going to use his focus. He's going to look at it. That focus is the curiosity piece of connection. And that curiosity piece of connection is going to hit his little oxytocin bell. Ding, ding. Then I would love it for him to move toward the scary thing. When he moves toward, that is the relaxation piece of curiosity. So that's going to ding his little ding, ding endorphin bell. When we get to the object, I would love to inspire him to touch it with his nose. When he touches the object with his nose, that dings the connection bell of dominance, or he's starting to feel safe with the object. So that's going to, again, give him some oxytocin. If we want to get the relaxation piece of this dominant safety, I want him to touch it with his foot or paw at it. That's going to give him some endorphin release. Once it gets where he could do this, focus, move toward, touch it with your nose, touch it with your feet, he'll start getting confident. And once a horse is confident, their play drive is going to start coming up. Play drive with connection is going to be bite, chew, rip, pull, shake, do stuff a lot with his mouth, and that's going to give him a huge oxytocin release. Play drive and confidence with relaxation is going to be stand on something, lie down on something, walk over something, jump over something when they're jumping appropriate, not jumping 8 feet over the top of it. As he learns through this exercise that when he sees a strange thing, that he could solve it using curiosity, dominance, and then confidence, and get confident with how to do that, then he is going to be like motivated. Give me all the scary things. I want to conquer them. I want to play with them. And you can take a horse out of a real fear survival space and bring them into this play, love, connect, trust, let's take on the world attitude. And you could do this with a horse that's hurt. You could do this with a horse that's bored. You could do this with a horse that's new. You could do it with a horse that's old. You could do it with any horse to help bring them out of sympathetic nervous system and bring them into parasympathetic nervous system. Now, I've got a long rope here because I would love it if Tiny finds the stuff and moves ahead of me. If I can inspire him to go ahead of me to find those focuses, then I'm going to be able to look with my eyes and belly button at jumps or down the trail, and Tiny's going to be able to say, oh, I know the answer to this puzzle when I'm on top of it. Because when we're on top of them, their head and neck are out in front of us. And when their head and neck are out in front of us, they've got to be confident enough to solve the puzzle themselves. If we are always leading them, then when you transfer to riding, it feels a lot different to the horse than if we do this where we're sending him ahead of us. Ultimately, the way to increase the level of difficulty of this exercise is to send the horse further ahead of you or to increase the speed. But we're going to start out going slow. All right, Mr. Tiny, are you ready, buddy? So I think it's going to be easy. I spy this little blue spot next to it. So I'm going to point my eyes and belly button at it. I'm going to give him, find the blue spots. They're getting colder. So if he passes it, I'm going to stop him and send it back. Bingo, you found it, Tiny. Good boy. So he's touching it with his nose. That's awesome. And now he's biting it. So we've gone from curiosity, looking at it, to move toward, which is part of his relaxation, to touch it with his nose, which again is connection. Then biting it is more of his connection going up. He hasn't put his foot on it yet, but well, I guess now he has put his foot on it. Yay, Tiny, you did it. That was awesome. So, putting his foot on it is the dominance. There we go, calling it. That's the dominance part of relaxation. Really good. Good job, Tiny. So we're going to find something else. I spy a green frog. You find a green frog? You're getting colder. So I'm going to send it back. Bingo! Tiny found the frog. Good boy. Wow, now he's biting the frog and thinking about picking it up. Good job, Tiny. So his play drive is starting to come up. Really good job. Really good job. So I'm going to stand here and see if he might think about pawing it or touching it with his foot. We'll see. So we can really see that Tiny, awesome, he thought about it, didn't quite make the foot there. Good boy. that is shut down to where they won't touch things with their nose and they don't want to bite on things, often that is a horse that's really got its emotions way in. So I really seek to help boys learn how to use their mouths on the stuff. It doesn't mean they're going to be biting everything and everybody. It just helps bring them to be more present and confident. Tiny was so unconfident in himself when we got him 6 months ago. And yes, you kicked it. That was so good. All right, Tiny, let's go for a long one. I spy a blue ball at the other end of the paddock. Good boy. Oh, he's getting excited. He's like, this is fun. So when he starts to bring his life up like this, I'm not going to fuss at him at all. I'm going to think, wow, we've got a lot of play drive coming up. And maybe this is why we would do this today instead of riding him. You found it! Bingo, Tiny! Bingo! Good boy. Good boy. And look how far ahead of me he is. And he pushed it. And he's following it. This is awesome. The Tiny had before, when that ball would move, he was leaving. So I'm loving that he's wanting to engage with it. Good boy. Do you think you could touch that with your foot, sweetie? Good. So another thing that I chose to do here today, we do have a round pen, but I wanted to do it in this open area that was bigger, so that if Tiny was afraid of any of these things, he would feel like he would have room to move away from them. Sometimes a round pen isn't enough room. Hey, sweetie, can you try to come back and see if you could touch that with your foot? That's awesome with your nose. Can you touch it? Almost. Now you're getting colder. There's more puzzle. There's more you could figure out here. What else could you do? Do you think you could touch it with your foot? So if he's there he did it. Good job. I was going to say, if he didn't understand, I could go over there and I could touch it with my foot and help him. I spy a little umbrella. Can you find the little umbrella? Tiny, you are awesome. I can't believe how well you're doing. Yay, good boy. So surely you have a bunch of random little stuff at your house. It could even be shavings bags or just anything. Little broken umbrellas. Good boy. Yeah, good boy. That you could make into targets to help your horse be able to touch them. You could put them in the barn aisle. I just try to fix it up so that the horse doesn't feel trapped. That was so amazing. For that thing to open up and for Tiny not to jump back, it really shows it. And to close and Tiny didn't jump back, it shows how much more confident he's getting. If a horse is stuck in survival, they're going to react to everything. They're going to either shut down, spike their cortisol, or they're going to panic or trigger and spike their adrenaline. If there's nowhere to go, cortisol goes up, and if there is somewhere to go, usually adrenaline will go up. Tiny, I just can't believe it. All right, I spy a gray tarp on the fence, blowing on the fence. So I kind of thought that this tarp blowing on the fence might be scary to him, which obviously it is. He's deciding to pretend like he's sniffing poop to avoid dealing with the tarp. Another thing that sniffing poop does, boy horses use this more than girls, is if they have a high anxiety, like this is bothering him, he has learned if I put my head down, I feel better. Because it triggers that relaxation and endorphin bravery by sniffing the poop. That was awesome. And now I'm just going to let him take his time. We can see. He's like, I know I'm going to feel better if I do this. And the Tiny, you are so brave, sweetie. The Tiny that we first got would have never felt the fear and leaned into it like that, or solved it with the sniffing poop. Like, this is such a winning deal for him. You are so good. So he's testing it, then he's kind of retreating, going away from it, then he's reapproaching by turning his head back and forth. This is really good. And he's biting it. I love it. You'll see that my tarps are pretty tattered. Like, that's a piece of a tarp that used to be much bigger. And I try to use obstacles that if the horses break them or shred them, I'm not going to be upset. I want them to use this as a moment to gain confidence, and shredding that tarp, overcoming this, is going to help him feel like I could jump that scary jump one day. Good boy. So he's standing next to the tarp and he's looking somewhere else. He's like, I could stand next to the tarp and not have to stare at it. You are so good, Tiny. And he played looking to the right. Now he's playing with looking to the left and then going back to the tarp. Really great job, buddy. My vision right now is, if you want to rip that off of the fence, I would love it if you felt brave enough to rip it off the fence. If he doesn't feel brave enough to rip it off the fence, that's okay too. But I'm so proud of him. Look, he's putting his head down next to the scary top of the fence. Tiny, you are so good. He's like, what else is in your toy box, Mom? Oh, you want to open that box. You're so hilarious. So this is really, I'm going to take this as a big win, because when we did this the last time, he was so afraid of all the things that we had to like back way up and really make it easier for him. The fact that he knows these games live in that box and he wants in that box, there are no treats in that box, there are the games in the box. The fact he did all this is such a big deal for Tiny. I think we're going to stop while we're ahead rather than raising the level of difficulty, because he just exceeded. This is such a huge win for him. I'm thrilled. So I hope that you enjoyed this.